Tired Tom, we are back again here on the Cowboys Report. As we broke down like 6 hours ago, the George Pickens trade to the Dallas Cowboys is now a done deal, not just being reported by our People's Insider, Slick Rick, now being reported by Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, and Nick Harris has the trade details. This one is official. George Pickens is indeed heading to the Dallas Cowboys. We'll break down the good, the bad, the biggest splash move the Cowboys have made in several years, as the Cowboys are indeed acquiring George Pickens. If you checked out our video that went out like at 1:30 a.m. Eastern time, thank you. Appreciate that. Now it's all official. So I'm going to link this video to that one, since this one will not get a push. Feel free to share it. Help me out. Help feed my family as well, since we're doing early morning shift and a late night shift here on the George Pickens trade. So shares would be appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. The official trade details on the George Pickens swap. The Steelers are getting a third-round pick. This is all per Nick Harris, by the way. And a sixth-round pick. The Cowboys getting George Pickens and a seventh-round pick. No details on the years. I would presume that's all this season, that all of those picks involved are, in the upcoming 2026 NFL draft. So, not a fourth. Thought it'd be really funny if the Cowboys should have a fourth-round pick away again. This time they're trading the third-round pick. Very clearly one of the substantive trades the Cowboys had conversations on. It kind of had happened pre-draft. It kind of faded away during the draft. And now kind of they reunite and reconvene and reignite those talks and get the deal done with Pickens heading to the Cowboys in exchange for a third and a sixth, seventh-round pick swap. Cowboys in line for a couple extra sixth-rounders, so keep that one in mind. Pickens, meanwhile, I'm not sure what the Steelers have seventh-round picks-wise, but so it should be a comp pick in that sixth-rounder. So potentially a minimal sixth for seventh-round swap. Potentially nothing too crazy there. And, a top 90-ish pick likely going to the Steelers in exchange for George Pickens. We'll break this down, the pros. I think there are cons I want to have conversations on, too. Grade the trade. A, B, C, D, or F. It'll be the pinned comments on today's show. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Let's start with the positives. The biggest of which is this. You have fixed your wide receiver 2 need. You don't have for this year at least, we'll talk about the long-term impact, you don't have to have a number 2 receiver anymore. You don't need to go sign Amari Cooper. You're not, trying to make Keenan Allen work. You have, I think, the best available option from a talent perspective. That is George Pickens. When he's been on, this is a fringe wide receiver 1, an extremely talented young player who gives you the physical outside, that X-receiver, not Dez Bryant, but in the same mold of play style that you haven't had in years since you had prime Dez. It was not CeeDee Lamb's game. They're very different types of players. Pickens gives you that outside threat, that vertical threat, that red zone ability, that physically talented wide receiver that you simply just haven't had. You haven't had that caliber of player in a long time. That was never Amari Cooper's game. That was never really. It's like a supercharged version of Michael Gallup. This is a 6'3", around 200-pound wide receiver who runs a 4.47. Athletically, that stuff's really impressive. It's really, really good stuff. There's downsides. There's a reason why he was available, but purely on the field, this was the best available option. You were never going to get Garrett Wilson. I don't think Courtland Sutton was realistically available either. But in the draft class he came out of, we'd had conversations like Pickens is one of the most talented players in that class. Everyone knew that. It was the other stuff that we'll get to here in a little bit. But purely from the on-field stuff, fixing your wide receiver room, the Cowboys did that. They have added an impact player, a splash player in May, which isn't always easy to do. They're able to pull it off. Now, don't we feel good about that wide receiver core? Don't we feel good about Adding Jalen Tolbert is now your third receiver. Lamb and Pickens and Tolbert and Turpin will be involved, and Ryan Flanoy will make the roster, and Jalen Brooks might be on the outside looking in now. I think we all feel better about the talent level in that wide receiver room. So what is your confidence level in it? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. The downsides here, and kind of why I had questioned if this was actually going to go down, is this very much does not fit what the Brian Schottenheimer culture vibes were aiming for. There are concerns with George Pickens. There have always been concerns with George Pickens. He is an elite level trash talker, sometimes too much so. There were concerns going into the NFL draft and coming out of it, like, is the football character good enough? Mike Tomlin, the reason he's available is Pittsburgh was like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. Pittsburgh was out of it. He was consistently late to stuff. He'd been fined repeatedly by the Steelers. Not just for meetings, he had a habit of showing up late to games. That is a huge concern for me. And it makes me wonder if they're going to pay him. And maybe they do this as let's see how this plays out. In theory, worst case, we could get a 4th or something round comp pick back, a year from now, and it's a shorter rental. There's clearly issues between Pittsburgh and George Pickens. I don't think that coaching staff got along well. I think it is an extremely fair thing to mention. If you can't make it work with Mike Tomlin at wide receiver, it doesn't normally get better once you leave. For some of the drama-filled Steelers wide receivers, Antonio Brown comes to mind, but Martavis Bryant and others have had some problems once they've left. They haven't been as good outside of Pittsburgh. Now, at the same time, this is a much better offense, I think, talent-wise, than what Pickens has dealt with the past couple of seasons. Like, this is the best quarterback he's played with. The bar is extremely low, so I'm not saying too much there either. But I do think managing Pickens now becomes a key part of what this Cowboys team does. I would assume they got buy-in from the coaching staff to sign off on this. In theory, a good leader like Dak Prescott is going to be able to help manage that. But I do think I'll just call it football character stuff. It's not like he's like a criminal or anything. That stuff has to be figured out. That is the concern of how and why George Pickens was available. So some final thoughts on this to come, but just do you like the trade? Y for yes, N for no? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. I think the 3rd round pick is fair. I made the comment last night. I'd love to give up a day 3 pick, but that just seems unlikely they're going to do that. I never wanted to give up a day 2 pick. A future 3rd, I think, is about fair for the value. It's not, I know Steelers fans were asking for a 2nd. I was never on board with giving up a 2nd. A 3rd is, a nice middle ground between the 4th I would have loved to have moved, or the 5th somehow if I gotten crazy lucky. And, it just seems like it's the right value. There's downside. There's great upside, too. This is definitely in the end, I'm going to give it at least a B. If not an outright A. You filled a huge need with a good player. I do wonder what they'll do contract-wise with George Pickens. That's another potentially highly paid player. I have doubts that they want to give, $60 million between 2 receivers, but the cap keeps going up. You didn't pay Jordan Lewis. You got money available. I'm not opposed to it. Part of me wonders if they're going to kind of test George and just see how this year plays out first, because I don't think a 3rd is enough that you have to pay him or you feel really stupid about it. When you gave up 4s for Mingo and whoever got to mention earlier, sorry, Jonathan, and Trey Lance. So I am cautiously extremely optimistic. Is that overly competitive there? There is a high risk offer, high risk factor to it. This is the exact type of receiver that you needed. Of note, by the way, both George Pickens and Micah Parsons are repped by David Mulgeta. So keep that one in mind. David Mulgeta. Oh, by the way, update. 2027 6th and 7th round pick swap. So future year pick swap. So I take that back from what I said earlier. Again, we're all doing this on the fly here. So 2027 6th and 7th round pick. Oh, wait, hold on here. That's interesting. That's not what Nick Harris had said. Spotrac has different details on that one. So I'm gonna ride with Nick Harris's numbers on the pick swap compensation of a 6th and a 7th rounder. Because Spotrac had said 5th and a 6th. So that's interesting, but I don't know. I didn't see that anywhere else. I am going to ride with Nick Harris reporting on 6th and 7th round pick swap on that one. That's very interesting. Sorry, we're doing this kind of on the fly here and on the moment. I will make note, update from Diana Rossini too, is that previous trade conversations, the Cowboys and Steelers had been talking about a 4th round pick. But if you're doing a future pick versus, which you never had a 4th round pick, I guess, that's, again, probably still fair in terms of how the trade compensation looks. Would have liked to have given up the 4th, but I think this is probably a little bit more of a balanced, even trade for what the parties involved were searching for there. So 3rd round pick and pick swap are the details of what's going on there. Some conflicting reporting with Spotrac mentioning a 5th round pick to Dallas, to the Steelers, and a 6th round pick to the Cowboys. So I'll mention this all in the cap because I know it kind of got confusing there. Core of it is 3rd round pick and to the Steelers, George Pickens back to the Cowboys. Some conflicting info in terms of the pick swap going on. Nick Harris mentioned a 6th to Steelers and a 7th to Dallas. Spotrac saying a 5th to the Steelers and a 6th to the Cowboys. So TBD on those exact details, but it's the 3rd round pick that matters the most. So we'll have more videos for you guys later today. Make sure you are subscribed.